be required.
So you do I hear what you say, that the big development you just mentioned, without the new sewage, you're going to struggle to control the sewage?
I think it depends on the phasing and the timing, and so that is something we would obviously need to work quite closely around. But you know, I think there is something in the order, and I'm going from memory, I think there's about 20,000 properties to be built in the Woodbury space. It would struggle to deal with that, but let's you know, work through the timing and what is appropriate. There is some capacity that could be taken, but not all of that capacity, and that would take 10-15 years to put in place.
If I could just come back, you clearly stated earlier that we are at capacity at some of the points already, around Woodbury, around the new buildings, Cranbrook, etc. So are you saying now that we shouldn't be building more in these places because you are having difficulty already, and that's why you are building the new system?
I'm saying that the forward forecasts in our planning show that we need to consider building a new works in that location. I am not saying we are at capacity today.
Councillor Bloxham.
The whole purpose of drainage and wastewater management plans is to be future focused and to look at those capacity issues.
Councillor Block. Okay, thank you. Next.
Councillor Bloxham.
Thank you. I'm ward member for Cranbrook. Cranbrook's been mentioned a couple of times. Also town council member. On the 20th of January, a resident reported that we've got a sewage spill in our beautiful country park, which is used daily by residents, children and dogs. After daily calls on the 26th of January, South West Water came out and identified we have 30 square metres of sewage in the country park, and it was urgent and needed a digger to clear the area. We are still waiting for it to be cleared. So I wondered, how long is when something's urgent, should we wait? We was also told that it was this problem was created by sewage coming up the pipes from Rockbeer when vegetation gets into the pipes, and that there are some monitoring valves that have failed, and this would happen again. So what is being done to prevent this from happening again, please?
Chair, again, this is quite detailed information. I don't think it's appropriate for us to discuss it here. We don't have that information to hand. We take that question away. Obviously, there would have been an external sewer flooding, as we call it, and there are service levels that we need to achieve. It would be foolish for me to try and explain exactly what happened because I don't have the detail. It's a very local operational issue, but let's note it down. If we've not responded in the time that we should do, we'll take a note of that and we'll come back to you, Councillor.
Yeah, but I think the real question there is, whilst it may happen again, and that is one issue, but the issue for the council is the fact that we know it's a spill there. They said it's urgent. It's still not been done. Surely it should be a priority.
I don't know where it fits within the priority. That's what I'm saying. It's a very detailed question, Chair. It would be foolish for me to answer that.
If you could respond back to Sarah, and then we will get members informed exactly what the outcome is as you see it. Thank you. Next person.
Chair.
Councillor Fernley.
Thank you. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm 20,000 houses near Woodbury. Is that the new town you're talking about that's going to be between, is closer to Farringdon? Because I'm slightly confused by what you're talking about there.
I was going from memory there. I'm sorry, I may have got the numbers wrong, but there is quite a substantial development in the local plan in and around Woodbury. And I haven't got the numbers in front of me now, but I may have got that number wrong. Yeah,
we will clarify that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
So if there's going to be far more houses built, I'm in the west of the district. How did we get to this point? How did we get to this point where we're nearly over capacity? We are over capacity in some areas, yet the treatment plant for Cranbrook didn't get built, and now we're going to have to wait another 5 to 10 years for it to be built. We have planning applications coming in all the time, and we don't always get, well, you have to kind of say yes, don't you, to planning. How are we going to get a better relationship where you're going to tell us honestly what developments you can cope with and what developments can't be coped with?
So part of the drainage and wastewater management plans is for us to set out what those are and engage with you around those drainage and wastewater management plans. So we published our final versions of those in June last year, and we are, very much wanting to have a dialogue about what those plans look like over the coming years. So let's make sure we do that, and we sit down and do that review of what planning do you think is coming up. And in what order. We already try and capture as much of that as we can, but I'm more than welcome to sit down and do a more detailed review.
And I think what's coming quite clearly over the last 10 or 15 minutes is the issue of capacity. And I know that there is going to be a meeting, we'll perhaps discuss it in a minute, with our planning department. I think these are the questions we need answers to, because it could well affect our local plan if we haven't got the capacity to deal with sewage. I think it's quite a serious issue we need to work together to address. So can I move on to the next one?
Councillor
Chair, could I just I don't think we've ever said we're at capacity now, and I think we just need to be careful of the language that we're using here. What we've said is we understand the future development needs, and we'll need to take those into consideration. But I'm not aware we've actually said we are at capacity. What we've said is surface water is entering our system, and we need to remove that. The Environment Agency also, under their enforcement powers, look at dry weather flow and whether or not we're exceeding that. If we're exceeding that dry weather flow, they will take enforcement action. I'm not aware we're exceeding any dry weather flow permits at any of these sites. So I think for the record, we just need to be very clear what we mean by capacity. Else we will all be misled in future conversations. Thank you.
I believe what was said, and I may be wrong, I thought the words used was close to capacity. I thought that's what was said, but I think we've aired this, but it is obviously an issue we need to address. Councillor Arnott, did I see you next one?
Oh, thank you, Mike, very much indeed for that. So just, if I may, just return to Councillor Young's question. This isn't a document I've seen, but the 2010 study, I understand, is still considered as a live document at Exeter City Council. Here at East Devon District Council, for whatever reason, we will find that out. It doesn't seem to be something we're looking at. But all the problems that you've got, Alan, as I understand it, were predicted in terms of needing a treatment plant in Cranbrook all the way back then. And speaking in colloquial terms, I suppose the councillors who at the time voted through the Cranbrook scheme were doing so in good faith, because they assumed, oh, well, there's that, there's an established need for some kind of treatment plant that'll get built. So just two straightforward questions, please. Were you aware of that 2010 study and the advice that a treatment plant would need to be built basically in advance of the rollout of Cranbrook? Were you aware of it? And if you were, at what point did South West Water make a decision we're not going to build that? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Very, very important questions, those. Alan, are you able to answer today?
I'm going to answer it in summary, and I'm hoping that Hazel can add a little bit of flavour. So we did consider all of the options, and the option at the time was not to go for a new treatment works. I'm going to call it East of Devon, because I'm not exactly sure where it would go in the East of Devon, and that we would continue to utilise Countess Weir as our treatment facility until a point in time where it was appropriate to put a new development in. So, Hazel, have I got that right? And Mark, is there anything else I can add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to add in, I was involved in that project at the time and looking at the optioneering of what to do with the Cranbrook sewage. There were lots of new treatment works options on the table. I wasn't involved in that early stage, but there was a few sort of fields and areas that were looked at. One of the main stumbling blocks was the discharge point. So where you have a sewage treatment works, you have a final effluent, a treated discharge point. And at the time, it was looking like we'd have to take that a long way down the ex-estuary. So that was one disadvantage of that option. Whilst we were analysing it, we reviewed Countess Weir. We did some intense flow and load surveys and calculations with specialist engineers, and it was determined that we did have headroom at Countess Weir, and we needed to do some upgrades, which is what I was talking about earlier. We put additional process units down at Countess Weir. We then looked forward, so that was for a 20, I can't remember what it was, a certain design horizon. We then looked forward again and said, yes, we would then need to upgrade Countess Weir again. And then we've reviewed that study since. I think the development has happened more quickly than we had anticipated back then, which is why Mark's now saying we've brought up that option again of considering an East of Exeter treatment works. But we do our own studies, we do our own assessment of what our treatment works are able to handle.
Well, thank you. I think we've done this one really, but I do think we may well, as a committee, want to come back to this when we go to our recommendations. But I'm very mindful of the time, and I think we need to move on. Next one, I think it's Councillor Howe.
Councillor Howe.
Thank you. And I need to come back to this because you mentioned you're not at capacity, but your engineers in my ward say you are, and you have hydraulic capacity issues. I have to point out, I am at the bottom of your run, shall we say. We are the closest to the Blue Ball pumping station, and we are getting increasing amounts of sewage running down our streets. Now, then I need to refer you back to what you just said about planning. And you have just written to our planning department saying it's fine to add more houses into St Mary Village. Yes, we know we got a capacity problem, but, you know, we probably think of doing something in the future when you can't do anything in the future because you haven't got any capacity. Your Blue Ball pumping station isn't up to it. It can't transfer enough from Blue Ball pumping station to Countess Weir. And we are now approving, or about to approve, quite possibly, applications, and have been approving applications that are due in the next local plan. Not the current one. We are now moving on again to the next local plan. And I am astounded, and I sit here absolutely astounded by the belief that you have capacity when you don't. And it is obvious in our streets every day. I can't say this any more blatantly. You are making things up. And I'm sorry to say that, but you are. And I just don't know how to add to that when you are not saying the facts. You can object to planning applications and you refuse to. I know when we grant a planning application, you can't refuse connection. That is different again. But you can object to connections to your system as part of the planning application. But you choose not to. You choose to take more money and not worry about the sewage running down our streets, which has been happening, you know, going back to the Elizabethan era. That's the trouble, the first Queen Elizabeth, not the second one. And I'm sorry if it sounds, I'm accusing you guys, because I don't. I believe you are trying to get yourself out of it, proverbially, but at present, you are up to your necks in it. And all of us need to deserve better when our village streets should not be running effluent down them. End of story. And I'd like to know how you're going to change those opinions to planning to actually object to applications that are going to make the situation worse, not make it better or even just maintain the current.
So can I answer that? Can I answer that, Chair? And we did write to East Devon District Council just before Christmas because of concerns over planning, which a number of other local authorities had. A number of other local authorities have taken us up on that ask. That offer is still there. I spoke to our colleague Ian Lake yesterday. We still haven't heard from East Devon. So we have offered that Councillor Howe to have that roundtable conversation on planning. And I think it's absolutely right that we do that with the right people. So please come back to us with the people that you would like to be involved, and we will have those conversations. Hazel was then going to answer a little bit more about the detail around Cliff St Mary, if she could.
Yeah, before we go to Hazel, what I would say is my understanding was that the planning department had written back saying that they wish to meet up, and I think that you clarify that as well. I think that would be very helpful, that meeting. But I think that there are two issues: the planning and the sewage. But thank you for that, because I do believe it's important that we do meet up with our planning people, because the planning side of it does get people very vexed and very concerned.
Chair, if they wrote before Christmas, why haven't we replied?
Ian, please carry on. Hazel?
Yeah, I was just going to say about Cliff St Mary, it's been an area that we've been focused on trying to resolve for a while. I don't know if you remember, I spoke ages ago at a pub in Cliff St Mary about the problems there. So yeah, there's the sewer flows are controlled up at Clisthoniton, and then one of the main problems that we have is the groundwater coming into the sewer between Clisthoniton and Cliff St Mary, which we have been trying to fix on a number of occasions, and I believe we've still got some work to do down that valley. So yeah, I think previously I've been talking about the whole of the East Devon region in terms of capacity, in terms of there's treatment capacity, and then as you quite rightly point out, there's hydraulic capacity. And I'm aware there is a development in Cliff St Mary going on, and I've had members of my team come round and discuss, what the implications are of that. We've got a surface water pump station in Cliff St Mary as well, which is very unusual for us. So how that will work with the new development. So we are thinking about that specifically, and it is an area that we are working on.
Okay, thank you. I believe Ed is on the Zoom somewhere. Can I invite Ed just to talk about what's just been said about the planning and not replying? I thought a letter had gone. Ed, could I ask you to just a few words explain how you see it?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so we have acknowledged receipt of the letter from South West Water in December, and what I've set out is that we would look forward to meeting with them to discuss future growth in the district and how that's accommodated by South West Water's network. The only reason for any delay is that, as many members will be aware, we have commissioned Royal Haskellingh to undertake a water cycle study. So this is an equivalent study to the study in 2010 that Councillor Young was referring to earlier. We are due to have that imminently, and it made sense for us to have that report ready so that we can discuss the outcome of that report and its findings with South West Water when we meet. We were due to have that report at the end of last week. That hasn't happened, but I am assured we will have it imminently, at which point I will quickly get in contact with South West Water and set up that meeting to discuss its findings. And that will give us an independent assessment of the capacity of South West Water's network, which I hope will help to respond to Councillor Howe and others' concerns about the information we're being given from South West Water, so that we can have a conversation with both our independent assessment by Royal Haskellingh and South West Water's own assessment to try and find a way forward through this to ensure that the appropriate capacity is available as developments are coming forward. Thank you, Chair.
In just taking the passion in Mike Howe's comments, I just wonder whether Mike or the Chair of Planning could come along with you to those meetings and share directly what's going to be discussed, if both South West Water and yourselves are happy with that, because I think it would be helpful to have some member and maybe the cabinet member.
Yes, I certainly would have thought the portfolio holder would be the key member to involve in that, and or the Chair of Planning. So yeah, happy to look at that.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Right, where are we up to now?
Councillor Bailey, Chair Jess Bailey.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to make a comment about capacity as well to South West Water. And that's about the capacity of the Fluxton sewage treatment works. And I'm talking about the capacity of those treatment works as opposed to hydraulic capacity. As far as I can tell, they're at capacity, looking at figures that I've been given. So I would like to ask, please, South West Water to comment on that. Thank you.
Alan, would you like to, or who would like to comment on that?
If we could just take that one away, because I don't have the numbers, I don't have that data in front of me. It isn't one of the questions that you've asked earlier. So can I take that one away and come back with an updated view on that, please?
Thank you. Next.
Councillor Blakey.
Right. Thank you, Chair. I'm afraid I'm going to come back to Cranbrook again because I am a ward member here. I want to make one observation about what Hazel said, if I may, about the previous decision not to build any treatment works locally because it was going to be difficult, and I presume by difficult you mean expensive, to run the outlets all the way down to the Valley of the estuary. However, that decision has been made. But my question is, you talk about being close to capacity or not very close to capacity. You have figures, you have numbers, percentages that you can put on your capacity for each given plant. I'd be very interested to know what sort of percentage you are at for the area to the east of Exeter, particularly bearing in mind that we're sitting here on a development which is not yet half complete, but which has imminently new schools and particularly a town centre opening, as well as the development of many more hundreds of houses in the kind of time frame where you would not be in a position to build a treatment works. So I would really like to know what percentage capacity you're at and how much time you actually have to react to the developments that are going on here. And bear in mind also that the new development at Hill Barton is only going to be 3 miles from here. We're not talking about Woodbury, we're talking about a place really geographically quite close by. So perhaps you can put some figures on it for me. Thank you.
Are you able to do that, Alan?
Let me come off mute again. It would be helpful if we'd had some of these questions in advance, Chair, because there's quite a lot of detail. I appreciate that councillors want to know this, but unfortunately we don't have that to hand at this point in time. If I quote it, I would probably be wrong and it would be inappropriate for me to do so. So I think a lot of these questions probably come out in the planning conversation that we'll be having with, I'm sorry, I really forgot, it was Ed, wasn't it?
Ed Freeman.
And I think Eileen Ragg, who's the other person who would be the chair of the planning committee. So probably be appropriate to have those conversations there rather than the detail here. We take it away that.
Yeah, I think what I would say.
I think the action is that we take away the fact that there are concerns around capacity. Let's pick it up in that conversation outside. That might be more appropriate.
Sorry, please, can I ask that I have a response to my question about Fluxton Direct, because I rather than, I think your colleague wrote it down, Alan.
Yes, we'll do that.
We'll respond to that one, but I can't give figures right now around capacity. I think that's a wider debate around development in East Devon.
No, but I think that what's been said is a fair one, because you said we're not at capacity. Some have said we're close to capacity. It will be good to know precisely what that is, and I'm sure you've got that. That personally, I would like to know. I think all the committee would like to know the answer to that. But let's move on to the next person.
Councillor Young, Chair.
Thank you for letting me back in. As I'm a ward member for Woodbury, I think I need to point out that the 20,000 houses is not going to be in Woodbury. And I'm a bit worried that South West Water think it's going to be in Woodbury, so I hope they're not going to connect the pipe up to the wrong place. But for clarity, the new town that is proposed, which would be 2,500 in the next new local plan up to 2040, will be between Hill Barton and the airport, between the Sidmouth Road and the dual carriageway A30. And another misnomer that been mentioned is that South West Water are surprised about the amount of housing that we have built. Looking back on the figures, we have been pretty well on target for all of our local plan. So I can't see how we can be surprised that the housing has been built possibly too quickly. No, we have built 950 pretty well every year for the last 10 years. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that we'll take that away. Next.
Councillor Olive.
Thank you, Chair. And indeed, through you, Chair, I'm sure all members who are here tonight and members of the public watching would agree that trust is earned, not given. Councillor Young, the portfolio holder for Coast Country and Environment, and in whose portfolio most of these issues sit, and I, as his assistant, attended South West Water's Beachwise Forum, which has been mentioned once or twice tonight and again in the written responses to questions, in November 2023. We agreed there a number of actions going forwards with South West Water staff present, and those actions included liaison meetings with East Devon Environmental Health, with East Devon Planning, with relevant cabinet members, all of which is now once again being talked about tonight. We followed up shortly afterwards to get the ball rolling on those, and we chased that up by email on a number of occasions. We've not even had the courtesy of a confirmation that our follow-up was ever received. I've spoken to many others, to councillors, to officers, and to members of the public alike who have had the same and similar experiences with South West Water over and over and over again. We have heard an awful lot tonight being pushed off to the future, in particular to this mythical future meeting between South West Water and various council officers, which, quite frankly, we have no assurance at all will ever happen, save a relatively, if you'll forgive me for saying, insubstantial promise. And so far, nothing that I have heard or experienced makes me feel as though I can trust that word. Not to put too fine a point on it, but quite frankly, I have no confidence that any of those promises are going to be kept. My question through you then, Chair, is quite simply, why should I, why should our fellow members, and why should the public at large trust anything that South West Water say? Thank you.
Well, I don't know. Did you want to comment at this time on and back on that, on what has just been said?
Again, thank you, Councillor Olive. We did meet at the Beachwise Forum and again at Exmouth, and I think at Sidmouth as well, maybe. But no, we are waiting for Ed to come back. I think the Royal Haskellning report is really important. That will set the direction of travel for what we need to look at. I think, again, we need to think slightly bigger than the conversations that we're having. We're having quite detailed conversations around specific sites. I think the important thing is, let's not leave it to this meeting to discuss specific issues about specific sites. Let's do them outside. We will respond, Ed, to you as soon as you've got that report. We want to meet with you because it's really important that we nail this. And I think you've been given Ian Lake as your contact point for this conversation. Is that you're nodding your head? Brilliant. And we'll make that happen.
But I think Councillor Olive makes a very good point. It is trust is earned. And if there is issues that promises have been made to have meetings, to start to sort things out and move forward, and they've not taken place, that is not very good. And I'm sure when we come to look at our recommendations, there may be something in there that says we do need to improve direct communications and deliver on those. And I think that's the key. We all want, I think I can speak for everybody on this call, we all want to work with you because we understand the importance water and sewage is to our residents. Absolutely. So can I move on? Because I'm very mindful of time and we've nearly been going an hour and 3/4. So we got the next one. We've got three more people who wish to speak.
That's correct. Councillor Fernley.
Thank you for allowing me to come back. So you don't want to talk specifics, but I do have problems in my ward. How am I going to talk to South West Water to get answers for my residents about problems at pumping stations and pipes from Worthy Bridge, which are ongoing and have been since last September. What is the mechanism that I'm going to be able to get answers from South West Water about what's going on in my ward?
I think that's an excellent question. I'm sure many members here are thinking exactly the same. How do they get answers? Did you want to comment at this point in time, Anna? Because I do think communications is key, and sometimes it does need face-to-face communications.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, if we've not responded to letters, that's not good enough. You know, hands up. We need to do better than that. And I think there is something to be said about us working more closely together, Chair. I mean, it is a very complex issue that we're talking about. We need to be absolutely focused on what we're wanting to achieve. So apologies, Councillor Fernley, we've not responded to requests that you've sent in.
I wouldn't know where to send them.
Oh, okay.
My first, you know, I'm a relatively new councillor, so this is an issue that has been mentioned, and asked people to ask me to bring this up tonight. But you know, is there who do I contact?
I think can we come back to you? I don't want to give a named person because a named person is less resilient than a particular email account that's owned by a group. If it's me and I'm not on, and I'm off for 6 weeks, nothing's going to happen, is it? So let's confirm that. I think we need to get the resilience in those communications properly considered, so that when you go in there, you know someone's going to keep an eye on it all the time and be actioning it.
What I'd suggest, Alan, is if I could suggest that when you give us the answers to some of the specific questions, you put in there what members can do to get answers to their questions. And that's what Councillor Fernley's saying, that she doesn't know. Now, you could say East Devon should have told her, but I don't think it's quite as simple as that. So if we can have a process that councillors know this is the email address and they will answer within a certain period of time, I think we'd all be very pleased with that. So
Councillor Rylance.
Thank you. So I've been a parish councillor in Broadclist, which is the so-called West End of East Devon, for a very long time. And we were handling the planning applications for Cranbrook for quite some years before Cranbrook became its own entity. So I was actually sitting on parish council when the sewage plant was pulled. And to our untrained eye, it seemed like a very bad idea to pull something that was going to be needed for up to 20,000 houses. And you say that the existing plants aren't at capacity, but what is capacity going to look like given to the untrained eye at the moment? It looks very much like we have reached capacity given the frequent events that we're having. That's my first question. My second question is, the last time you were in Scrutiny speaking to us, you said that you had 2 planning officers who were working across the whole of the Southwest. So you are a consultee in the planning process. The so-called West End of East Devon, my ward and Councillor Howe's ward, are probably some of the fastest growing wards in the Southwest. And so you are probably getting quite a few applications for quite large developments. So my question about that, which you may not be able to answer, but I would hope that you'd be able to get hold of the information, is have your planning people ever turned down a connection? And do you have specific technical assessments for the connections that go ahead that show what you believe to be the position of the capacity on the network? And it would be very useful to be able to get that information, to know that lots of things were considered before you said yes to things. So do you ever turn anything down? And is the information, the technical assessment, are they actually available for us to view? And what do you think capacity will look like?
Again, it's a very good question, and I think, you know, for us for myself and Mark, who aren't necessarily in our developer services team, who would respond to planning applications, it would be wrong of us to try and attempt to answer that question again. Ian Lake, who's head of developer services, will be the person who to answer that question. Hence, Ed, and when Ed and Ian get together, I think that's the sort of question and conversation that needs to happen on the back of what planning is planned now, how planning is actually considered going forward, and then we can answer those questions all in that conversation and the workshop. Probably the best place to do that, Councillor Ryland. Sorry, I've just lost your name there.
Yeah, I would add that, and then I think it's such a key. It's coming out. Capacity is coming out throughout, and planning is coming out. And I'm sure when we get to recommendations, there will be something in there because something needs to change. Because I
could
think
I come back on that, please, Councillor
Yes.
Goodman,
Yeah,
just for a second? You are consulted along with all the other relevant agencies at the time of the outline planning. So I don't really understand why it's a surprise to you that houses are being built, houses on connections that you have okayed as an organisation. I just don't understand why it's a surprise.
Wasn't the question. The question was how many have you rejected or objected to? I don't have
No,
that.
I get that.
You asked,
okay,
so bear with me. You also asked me what the process was that we went through. That's the conversation with Ian Lake and Developer Services, and I think that's a conversation that Ed and his team and whoever else wants to be involved to understand that whole process involved in order to make decisions on whether or not developments are appropriate within a specific area. That was my response to that question.
So what will capacity look like for you?
I think the best thing is to talk about that conversation in the planning meeting that Ed will lead on behalf of you and with Ian Lake from South West Water.
But we do agree that you are consulted on planning applications well in advance of them being built, and that removing the sewage is your job. Well, not your specific job, but your organisation's job.
That is correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. I think it's a really important question. Look, we've got 3 people still with their hands up. What I intend to do is to take these as the last 3 questions. I think we've done very well over the last 2 hours, and I think 2 hours, it will be 2 hours in 12 minutes time. My intention is to take the 3, and then I think we will then just have a 10-minute break while we all consider recommendations and then come back and finalise the recommendations. So can I next ask, I think it's Councillor Arnott, is it?
Councillor Arnott, yes.
Thank you, Chair, and well done on chairing this meeting. This has been difficult. I can really understand that, and I think you facilitated it. It's a really hard start to it. I think you facilitated it brilliantly since then. So thank you. So just a news flash: you'll be meeting me at whatever meeting's going to happen as leader of this council. This is so obviously the most that faces the area of East Devon, and it clearly has been for many years. I am completely unsatisfied with this matter of the 2010 report and all answers from it, and that includes from the East Devon side as well. So, Ed, when this Royal Haskin report arrives in the council, I expect that to be emailed to me same day. I want to be able to read it, and I have still not got an internal answer, not a convincing one, as to why, when they were commissioned to do this work, that 2010 report that, as has been established, has been a key reference document to Exeter, who presumably paid for it with us ever since up to the present day, why we still seem to have just lost it within the organisation. This is unsatisfactory. I think it's, I mean, I really feel for somebody like Hazel in this, I completely get that, you know, in a way, this is like fighting, you know, it's like fighting a battle, isn't it? Oh my God, there's even more. How are we going to connect this to this, and when are we going to be able to do it? It's absolutely crystal clear. That treatment plant in Cranbrook should have been built. End of story. That's it. You didn't build it. We don't know why. You've been asked many times, and this is through you, Chair, so I don't want to get too overexcited. But asked many times, why didn't you build it? So, final chance. I don't care who answers it, SWW, but through you, Chair, why didn't you build it?
I think we have answered that, Councillor, or not. I think Hazel did answer that on a number of occasions. We went through the engineering. Bear with me, just ask the question, Councillor, please. You've just answered the question.
No, I would like to say you haven't answered it. If you're going to depend upon that, what you have described is the ways in which you then coped with the situation that arose from you failing to build it, which is what my council thought you were going to do when it agreed to the development in Cranbrook. So it's not a question of how you have dealt with the crisis that has fallen from that. I want to know at boardroom level, Who decided? No, we can't be bothered. We won't build the new treatment station at Cranbrook because that is what was expected.
So I believe we have answered that question, and Hazel did say some time ago that we looked at the optioneering and we looked at what we could do at the time, and the decision was made to do the upgrades at Countess Weir. Mark then did say we recognise that any future development will need to consider a treatment facility at the east of Exeter. So that decision to upgrade Countess Weir we've just explained, and we've also just explained that to accommodate any future developments when we get to capacity, we will consider and do something at the east of Exeter. Location to be decided. Thank you, Chair.
Can I start with a quick supplementary, straightforward question. If you built that treatment plant, would we be having the problems we have now?
What problems are you suggesting you have now?
Well, sorry, Hazel, I mean, okay. I imagine you've heard them tonight. Councillor Howe, spouts of sewage coming outside his shop, tankers going around Exmouth. I don't know.
They're not to do with Cranbrook being connected to Countess Weir, though. They're sort of separate issues. The fact that Cranbrook is connected to Countess Weir and we're processing that sewage at Countess Weir and we're still meeting our final effluent standards at Countess Weir, I'm not aware of there being any current issues with that option that we chose.
Isn't the issue, if I could cut in to help, isn't the issue Blue Ball Station that is, again, at capacity on certain events, and as such, your sewage pipes are then constrained and villages get flooded with sewers and backs up. And that is led on to the belief that the pipe from Blue Ball Pumping Station to Countess Weir is at capacity. You cannot put more pressure into it. You've already increased the pressure, was it 3 times by increasing the pumps at Blue Ball? You can't do it again.
I think that I'm going to chair's prerogative of this, and I know we will be discussing recommendations, but what it strikes me is what is needed is more scrutiny, more investigation to exactly what's happening with you in your area, Mike, but also the excellent point that Councillor Arnott's mentioned about the decision not to build the sewage work. I'm going to have a break, as I said, in a few minutes' time, and then we will come back for recommendations. But I'm inclined to be suggesting that scrutiny, a task group, whichever is the best way to do it, it does investigate in more detail with proper information exactly why the decision was made, how it was made, and what we're actually going to do about it. Because I am concerned listening tonight on the potential development going forward in East Devon with what we've got. But we're not going to resolve it tonight. But I think as a recommendation, and I take what Councillor Arnott said, I think we do need to know what has happened. So look, we've got 2 more people that I'm going to allow to speak. Councillor Faithful.
Chair, before I just need to make a correction if I could, because my business has been mentioned, and I do have to point out my business has never been affected by this. It is just out of the sewage flow, but other businesses in my village and certain residents have. All right, I just need to be clear about that.
Thank you, Mike.
I think, Mike, it would be good if we could pick up outside of this meeting, because there is much more detail on Clist St Mary and that whole Blue Ball, Clist Honiton system, so we can talk about it separately.
Right, now, Councillor Faithful, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just trying to, earlier Councillor Bailey was talking about Fluxton, and there was talk about getting back to her. I'm not sure how that will be done. Will that be through the chair? Because I'm just asking, this is Ottery St Mary pumping sewage works. Councillor Bailey is West Hill, so it's not only for West Hill. Could any communication include myself, Councillor Johns, and Councillor Bethany Collins as ward councillors for Ottery, please?
Thank you. What I will be suggesting the recommendation is, I think that the whole council, the answers we get back from South West Water, I see no reason why all councillors shouldn't receive a copy of those so they're aware of what's happening, because what's happening in one area could help them elsewhere. And I think it would be useful for all councillors to see the questions that come back, if that is okay. So move on to the very last person, Councillor Jess Bailey.
Thank you very much. I just want to ask about a different subject. We've talked all about sewage today, but one of the things that really, and that's obviously a matter of grave concern, but also the thing that really concerns me on top of that is drought, and the comments that were made by the regulators about South West Water's dealing with the drought in 2022, in which I believe they described South West Water as not being honest. I'm seriously concerned, particularly because of the ever more housing that's being built, that the pressures on our drinking water and that the lack of planning could actually be really, really harmful for our residents. And I would like to be clear, please, on what South West Water is doing to protect and ensure that we have enough drinking water, that it is being honest with the regulators, that it is being properly prepared, because obviously with climate change there's going to be ever more droughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to take that?
Yeah, I can answer that very quickly. I mean, it is a question, Councillor Bailey, that does come up significantly as a result of 2022 being an extremely dry year, and I think it was the driest year in 150 years or something. We have just updated our water resources management plan. That did go out for consultation in Q3 of this financial year. We received a number of responses to that water resources management plan, and we're currently adjusting the water resource management plan accordingly. We are also looking at new resources around South West Water, as well as looking at a new resource in Bristol Water as well, which is called Cheddar 2. The aim really is to also then have the ability to connect up those resources so we can move water more freely around our region, whilst at the same time ensuring that we don't take water from those more environmentally sensitive areas. So all of that information is actually available on our website, the responses to the water resource management plan, and the Environment Agency have provided comments on that, as well as Natural England have. So that's the next phase, is to implement the recommendations within that water resource management plan.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to just, I've deliberately left members to ask some, absolutely, I think, very pertinent and excellent questions. I just want to finish by saying, when you potentially, because I want to go to drinking water, when you potentially, and water generally, when you think there may be a time when the water may stop because you're doing work, do you always tell residents that you're doing flushing, so therefore they know that they may not have water for a couple of hours?
Yeah, Mark, unless you can advise otherwise, we do inform customers when we are doing works, when we're mending leaks, when the water supply may be cut off to mend a leak. And when
I'm talking about when I'm talking about when you deliberately do flushing, as you currently are in Sidmouth in January and February. Do you tell residents that there may be an interruption to supply?
Flushing doesn't normally involve an interruption to supply. The issue that we see when we're flushing, and the purpose of doing flushing, is to remove iron deposits which may have built up on the inside of the water mains. So the purpose of flushing is to actually dislodge those and remove that discoloration. So flushing would not generally cause an interruption to supply. It may cause some discoloration, and that we would warn customers about that and the need to flush their taps for a bit longer.
So wouldn't it be helpful when you're doing that in an area of town, you just tell the town this is what we're doing in case there's an interruption to supply and there may be a change of colour? The reason I mention it is because my water was off for 2 hours today. When she phoned, my wife phoned the helpline, brilliant engineer came and explained what's happening, and it did go back on 2 hours later. And I'm really saying, back to the question, and the reason I mention it, it's about getting the confidence of people and communicating. And just something out on internet, on social media, say, look, in Sidmouth in January, February, we're doing flushing. You should be all right. It should be interest, but it could cause some just to help people know what's happening. Now, with that, I really would like to thank, first of all, South West Water for coming along today. We are going to have a break, but I just want to summarise. I want to thank them for coming in. I understand it's not an easy thing to answer questions from members, but thank you for what you've said so far. And I'm sure we will come back with some recommendations. But I really want to thank members, both inside the committee and outside the committee. I did not know what to expect tonight. I thought it would be some really good questions, but I would say I think that members have really shown a grasp of the issues, and I think we've really done very well with some very insightful comments made by a number of members. So I would just like to break just for 10 minutes, and in that time, can I say to those on the committee, could they start thinking about what recommendations they may like us to make? Now, we will have to make this at our next meeting because we're only consultative today, but I do think there are some things that have come up today that council would want to see us make some recommendations. I don't want to preempt it, but I think they would. So could I just ask Sarah just to stop the recording for 10 minutes, but we will be back exactly on 2013. Or make it 14. We don't want
Chair, can I just ask, so we're required to stay on because these are your recommendations, aren't they? So we'll leave the meeting.
Quite happy. No, you do not have to stand on. Stay on. All I would say is that we will be in touch.
Thank you very much. And Sarah, we'll look forward to receiving the notes. That would be lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.